Hey, it's Chris Mahan again. I want to welcome you to the first session of 10 strategies to thrive during tough economic times. Actually, this is a pre-session. Now, the time that you spend here in these videos, I want to pack as much value into them as I possibly can. So maybe you've attended other webinars where, they've spent the first 45 minutes talking about themselves and bringing in all kinds of testimonies of people who have used their systems and been successful. And finally, you get like 10 minutes of content, and then they go into a half an hour spiel wanting you to buy their product. That's not what you're going to find in these videos. I simply want to share with you what I believe are some very important strategies and tactics that you can use right now to begin to increase your revenue and your profits. But before I get into that, I want to share just a little bit about myself. I'm not going to take 45 minutes to do it. I'm not going to bring in a bunch of testimonials, but I just want to share with you some things so that you can understand who I am and where I come from and why I do what I do. So it was in November of 1999. I woke up that morning just as the police were breaching the door to the room of the Fleabag Hotel that I'd spent the night in. They were followed closely by the paramedics. They gathered me up, whisked me off to the ER where the doctors and the staff there worked to stabilize me and to save my life. Now, I have to be honest with you. When I woke up in that ER room, I was not happy. I was not glad to still be alive. You see, I had wanted my life to end there in that room. The 12 months leading up to this were some of the most difficult that I had ever experienced in my life. I mean, things were going pretty well in the position that I was in. We were making great strides, making some growing, just showing a lot of positive things. But there was also a lot of people who were resistant to change. And I was hearing a lot of complaints. People weren't happy with some of the changes. They weren't the people, though, that, I frankly, I will say it this way. They're not the people that I gave a whole lot of credence to, because they wanted things to remain the same they were. They liked the status quo. They didn't want growth. They didn't want change. And so they were very unhappy with the direction that I was leading this organization. Also, I found myself facing some very tough economical times, made some bad financial decisions. It's all on me. But it got to the point where my credit cards were maxed out. My credit score was in the toilet. I was juggling bills every month, trying to decide who to pay and who to put off for another month. Bankruptcy seemed imminent. I mean, this financial stress just came bearing down on me. As a result, it plunged me into a deep depression. And I didn't even realize that I was facing this depression. But it got so bad that it led to the demise of my marriage. It separated me from my two sons for over a period of a year. And I really felt that those around me would be better off, as well as I would be better off if I was no longer around. And so I attempted to take my life. Now, here I am over 20 years later, and I'm very grateful to those police, those paramedics, those doctors, the ER staff, all of those who worked to save my life, because they gave me a second chance. And I've experienced so many great things over the last 20 years. I am so glad that I was unsuccessful and that I was able to be around, to be reconciled with my two sons, to see them start their families, to remarry, and to enjoy a great, wonderful life with a very wonderful woman. Also learned some things about finances and how to be a little bit better, a better steward of my finances, be a better manager of my finances. And things have gone pretty well. Started two businesses along with my wife over the last few years. We've been successful. But here's the point. The reason that I tell you this story, because this is part of my why. as to what I do, what I do. I went into business coaching because I knew that I could help business owners increase their profits and thus begin to ward off some of the financial pressures that small business owners seem to face on a regular basis. And so I began to see my role not just as a business coach, but I saw myself as someone who helped people to maintain their sanity. I saw my someone as a person who helped save marriages, to restore relationships with children and grandchildren and friends and neighbors. I saw myself as someone who may even step in some cases and save people's lives. That's how important I believe what I do is. I believe that it's making a lot of positive changes in the lives of those who work with me, who put these things that I teach into practice. They implement them into their businesses, and they begin to see significant growth within the next 12 months. So I want you to understand that, because I want you to understand where I come from and why I do what I do. Now, what is it that I do? Good question. I'm glad you asked. You see, I assist business owners increase their annual revenue by 25%, 50%, or more within 12 months. Now, the way that I do this is I have proprietary software that I license. It allows me to take any business and put it through over 495 million weighted sequential algorithms. Now, once that software has processed the things that a business owner and I have discussed and entered into the system, it provides a step-by-step plan that business owner can implement in their business and begin to see financial growth, financial stability, and it's laid out in such a way that they'll begin to see those returns early, and they'll begin to see the things that have the greatest impact on their business. So this 5-day sprint to success is a very brief introduction to what I do. And although it's brief, it's going to provide you with strategies which, if you implement them, they will help you to grow your revenue and to grow it quickly. Now, as I mentioned, today is a pre-session. I'm not going to be teaching any of the strategies that we're going to be talking about during this 5-day sprint. But instead, I want to share just a couple of what I consider very foundational components that every business owner needs to make sure he or she has a handle on, because it's going to impact so much of what they do. And in fact, during these next 5 days, as I share with you some of these strategies, I will often be saying, this is one of the reasons why you need to know this. All right. So the first of these things is you need to understand your target market. Target market, some people call it a target audience. Some people might call it your ideal client. Whatever it is a group of people who buy a particular product or service. Now, in your case, to be specific, your target market are those people, those groups of people who buy your product or your service. So it's important to begin to identify who falls into that target market, because as I mentioned, I believe it's a foundational component for everything that you do, especially when it comes to marketing. So as you try to figure out who is in your target market, I think that one of the things you need to do is you need to begin by looking at your product or your service and answering some questions. Four in particular. The first question is, what need, what desire, what want do your products or services fulfill? What needs, wants, desires does your product or your services fulfill? Second question, how much does your product or service cost? Third, who makes the decision to purchase your product or your service? Let me give you a quick example. For instance, let's say that you're selling used children's clothing and maybe used children's toys. All right, so the people who are going to use your product or service are going to be children, but they might not be the ones who have the power to make the decision to purchase. Instead, it would be their parents. Another example, let's say your particular business is a business to business setup. Well, then you would not go into a business and want to talk to the administrative assistant. As valuable as they are to any organization, most of the time they're not the ones who have the power to make a decision to purchase. Instead, you want to talk to their purchasing manager. So you can see that by understanding who has the power to make that decision, how that becomes very important in determining who's in your target market. And then the fourth question is this: how are your products or services accessed? In other words, do the people who are going to be in your target market, do they have to live in the same general area where you do? Do you have a brick and mortar business where people need to come inside to purchase your product or to talk to you about your services? Or is your product, is your service something that can be accessed online so that it's available to anybody in the world who has access to the internet? Those four questions: what want, need, or desire do your products fulfill? Number two, what does your product cost? Number three, who has the power to make that buying decision? And fourth, how do they access your products? Now, once you've answered those questions, then you're about ready to begin to identify the group of people who have those characteristics. They have the particular need, want, or desire that your product fulfills. They have the financial ability to purchase the product or service that you sell. They have the power to make that decision to buy, and they have access to your business through physical location or online. Now, we're not going to get into the specifics of how to determine your target market, but I do want to give you at least a heads up of things that you would need to consider. Now, I actually teach this. I have resources that help business owners to go through this whole process. But if you want to do this on your own, simply Google it. How do I determine my target audience? And you'll probably find a lot of different templates that you can use that are out there. All right. But some of them are going to ask you to identify your target market by age. They will probably ask you to identify them by income, by their gender, by their nationality or their ethnicity, their marital status, their family size, their occupation or the industry that they work in, their language, their education. These are all aspects of their demographics. These are the things that are going to identify who is in your target audience. But to even better understand your target audience, you might also need to identify their psychographics. This would include things like their lifestyle. Are they conservative? Are they thrifty? Are they extravagant? Do they buy things that make their life comfortable, or do they buy the things that they want rather than necessarily the things that they need? What is their lifestyle? What are their values and beliefs? Are they, do they view, how do they view the environment? How do they view things like safety? How do they view things like animal testing? I mean, by having a greater understanding of their values and their beliefs, you can make sure that you are marketing yourself so that it appeals to those values and those beliefs. So their lifestyle, their values and their beliefs and their attitudes. Are they optimists? Are they looking for the best things in life, or are they pessimists, always looking for problems and hopefully to find a solution to their problem? Are they supportive? Are they critical? Are they easily led? Are they extremely opinionated? What motivates them, especially when it comes to what motivates them to buy? What are their activities and interests? This is going to play a large role in where you place your marketing materials. What social class does your audience belong to? That is going to have a great deal of what you say. I mean, how you say it, so that you are appealing to that, again, that target market that you have, that social status that you're aiming for. Now, knowing all these things are going to be of great value, especially when you begin planning out your marketing campaign. Now, once you have all those things, all that information in hand, now it's time for you to create a 1 or 2 sentence statement that best describes your target audience. Let me give you a couple of examples. One person said, my target customer is a successful young professional, a middle-class person aged 20 to 35 who is single, makes more than $50,000 a year, is physically fit, has a higher education, and has an active interest in economics and politics. Now, do you see how this person specified several different things? First of all, they were young professionals. They put in the age limit, 20 to 35. So they were middle class. They're single. Their income is around $50,000 a year. They're someone who takes seriously their physical health. They're runners. They exercise. They're members of a gym, whatever. They have a higher education. And they have interests in things like economics and politics. All of these things help that business owner determine what to say in their marketing and where they're going to say it, where they're going to put their marketing pieces, whether it's on a billboard, a TV ad, a radio ad, an advertisement in the newspaper or a periodical, whatever it is. Knowing these things helps them to put their marketing in the place where it's going to have the greatest good. Here's another example. My target market is affluent new mothers, married women with children under 5 years old, who are between the ages of 25 and 45, have a household income of $100,000 annually. They are a trend and opinion follower, and their purchase motivations are driven by their peer group. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this person was I believe that they had a child care agency. So you can see their target audience was those mothers who were making the decision where to place their children for daycare. They had to have children that were under 5 years old. They had to have a household income of $100,000 or more. They were trend and opinion followers, which is a key that they used in their marketing. They realized that they were motivated to purchase as they were led by their peer group. And so again, that became a very important part of their marketing. So all of these things together help you to decide who makes up your ideal client, who's in your target market. And again, we're going to be revisiting this idea several times during the week. So I hope that you have a good grasp on it. Your target market are those people who have the ability, the desire, and the want to buy your product or service so that it solves a problem in their life. So we're going to go on to the next component here in just a moment. But again, first of all, make sure you understand who is your target market. All right, so let's take a look at the second component, which is having a market dominating position. Now, a market dominating position is defined as any value added customer perceived benefit or combination of benefits which differentiates you from your competition and does so in strong enough manner that it makes your business the logical choice in the mind of your customers and prospects. Now, there's a couple of things I want to tear down that definition just a little bit because I want you to truly get a grasp on what constitutes a market dominating position, so that when it comes time for you to determine your own, you'll do well. All right. So the first thing is it's a customer perceived benefit. It's not what you think is valuable. It's what your prospect thinks is valuable. When I used to live in Northern Indiana, there was a car dealer there that every year they had what they called their catch-up sale. And this was a sale that took place just prior to the time that they had to pay inventory, or they had to pay tax on their inventory. And that's why they called it their catch-up sale. They wanted to catch up with their actual sales versus their target sales. But what they did every year is during this catch-up sale, if you purchased a vehicle from them, they gave you, in addition to the vehicle, a case of ketchup, the kind of ketchup you put on your hamburgers and fries. Now, you know what? I mean, if I'm deciding between two places to buy a car, and one place is giving me a $500 discount, and the other place is giving me a case of ketchup, guess where I'm going? I mean, who really wants a case of ketchup with their brand new car? It just didn't make sense. Now, they used it for several years, and I'm assuming that it was somewhat successful, but I wouldn't have called it a market dominating position because it was not something that their customers perceived as being valuable. Now, again, a market dominating position means that you're going to have the benefits or a combination of benefits that differentiates you. This is the second key point. Your market dominating position differentiates you from your competitors. Too many business owners are competing on price. And as long as you're competing on price, you will never enjoy the success that is your potential. Because there will always be someone who will come around and offer your product or service at a lower price. And there will always be those customers who, no matter if it's just 10 cents off, $1 off, $10 off, whatever, will jump ship and run to your competitors as soon as they can get your product or service at a lower price. So you don't want to compete on price. Instead, you need to differentiate yourself in some way from your competitors, and do so, as I said, in a strong enough manner that it's a no-brainer for your customers or prospects to decide to do business with you. It only makes sense. It makes more sense to do business with you than it does with your competitor down the street. Now, the key to added value is determining what your target market, oh my, when have we talked about your target market? Determining what is it that your target market perceives as valuable. Now, there's one thing that I want to share with you, and a lot of people, this is such a very simple statement, but it's so packed full of meaning, and I really want you to chew on this. And I want you to think about it not so much as a business owner as much as a consumer, because I think you're going to find that it's very true in your life, and that is this. People do not buy based on price. They buy based on the value they receive for the price they paid. They don't buy based on price. They buy based on the value they receive for the price they paid. Now, I'll be the first to admit, there are always people out there who are going to run to the lowest price. I mean, many of you may have somebody in your family tree, an aunt or a grandmother or a mother or somebody who used to cut out coupons in the newspaper. And then they would travel all over town. They'd go to 8 different grocery stores because they had coupons that were good at this store and coupons that were good at this store, and enabled them to buy a jar of peanut butter for 10 cents less here than they could have bought it over there. And so they spent all their time running back and forth between these stores because that's where they could get the best price, the cheapest price. Guess what? Those aren't the kind of people you want as your customers. I mean, yeah, you want people to spend money with you, but your valued customers The ones who are going to stick with you, who are going to be loyal to you, the ones who are going to provide the greatest amount of income in your business are not price shoppers. They're looking for value. And so if you want to reach them, you need to look at your business and determine, how can I create greater value with my product or services so that when customers are trying to decide who to buy from, I am standing head and shoulders above my competition. And it's a no-brainer for them to come and to do business with me rather than them. Now, sometimes you have to innovate your business and you have to offer extraordinary value. And you do that by creating a market dominating position. Let me give you an example. In the late 1950s, two brothers bought a local pizza restaurant. I believe that they bought like 2 or 3 different locations in the town where they lived. And for a few years, they went ahead and followed the model, the business plan of the previous owner. And it was a dine-in restaurant, and they did okay, but they had loftier dreams. They wanted to build a franchise. Now, the thing is, there were already several major pizza players in the arena who had already established franchises. And so they were breaking into a market which many already thought was saturated. But here's what they did. They took a look at the people who would buy their product, pizza, and they tried to find out who out there wasn't being served under the current business plan. And they discovered 2 underserved segments of the population. The first were college students, and the second were military personnel who lived on military bases. And what these 2 groups had in common was they had limited financial resources and they had limited time. So based on that understanding of their target audience, they then put together a market dominating position. They learned how to make their pizza less expensive. They put together a business plan that involved building pretty nondescript buildings, and they placed them close to college campuses and close to military bases. They hired college students part-time, so they didn't have to pay them a whole lot. They hired a bunch of them to be their drivers. And then they came out with their tagline: hot, fresh pizza delivered to your door in 30 minutes or less, or it's free. Within years, Domino's became a billion-dollar player in the pizza industry. It wasn't because they served the best tasting pizza. It wasn't because their buildings were the most attractive. It's because they served the specific needs, wants, and desires of their target market. Let me give you another example. There were some movers who were on the brink of bankruptcy. They just weren't getting the business that they needed to stay afloat. And so they were challenged to look at their current business plan and to try to figure out how they could innovate their business, how they could pivot in such a way that they could regain a large segment of that population, the people who were looking to hire movers to move their household goods from one location to another. So they began to do research. One of the first things that they discovered is this major pain point that their target market experienced. And that was, people hated to hire movers because they knew that there was a good possibility that a lot of their household goods were going to be damaged in the process. I mean, it was a given. People knew that they could expect some kind of loss if they hired a moving company. But then again, they didn't want to move themselves. So what this company did is they figured, how can we deal with this pain point? How can we minimize it? And so they came up, first of all, with a process of packing. They used a lot more packing materials. They packed their trucks in a specific way so that it would minimize movement and minimize damage. And they got so good at what they did that they were able to minimize their damage to almost nothing. But then they went even a step further. You see, all of their competitors said that they were fully insured. I mean, actually, that was a requirement. If you were going to be in the moving business, you had to be insured. But what people didn't realize, unless they suffered a significant loss and went to try to collect on it, or unless they read the fine print of their contract, is in order to be fully insured, all the moving company had to do was to pay you per pound of damage. And let me tell you what that means. Let's say you have a big screen TV. Let's say you paid $2,000 for it. And in the midst of the mover stepped on it, cracked the screen, damaged the components, the thing's no good anymore. And you say, that's okay. They're fully insured. I'm going to get some money and I'll replace my TV. And then you find out the truth. They're only going to pay you dollars per pound. That $2,000 TV may weigh, what, 40 pounds? And say they pay you $5 a pound. You get this check for a whopping $200. Is that going to replace your TV? Absolutely not. So this moving company decided that if they're going to tell people they're fully insured, they're going to be fully insured. And what they did is they insured for replacement value. So if they stepped on your $2,000 TV and smashed the screen and ruined the components, you got a check that enabled you to replace that at no cost to yourself. And they began using this market dominating position that, first of all, they had a packing plan that almost eliminated damage. And if they did damage any of your goods, you were going to get full replacement value on the insurance. Now you can see how that would make a difference in their business. And it did. I mean, let me tell you their success story. Because of this and some other things that they made changes in their marketing, all of a sudden they were getting more leads than they could handle. And so they had to contract with 4 of their competitors in the city to handle their overflow. They taught them their packing strategy. They had them covered by the same insurance. So those 5 companies were working together to take care of the number of clients that were coming out of this company. And 9 months later, this company that had been on the brink of bankruptcy sold their business to those 4 competitors for several million dollars. You see, people saw a differentiation in this moving company that set them apart from all the other companies. And so when it came time to hire somebody to move them, it was a no-brainer who they were going to call. So what is it that predominantly differentiates your business from your competitors? And again, I'm going to say it. Please don't tell me that it's price. Because price, you're always going to lose. Remember, customers buy based on the perceived value they receive for the price that they pay. Let me share an example of 2 restaurants. Restaurant number 1, they put a coupon in the paper. It was for 25% off of their $40 meal. $40 meal was steak, potato, a vegetable, probably some kind of a drink. $40, you got a coupon for 25% off. So you got a perceived value of $40 for just $30. So you paid $30 and you got a $40 value. That's $10 more than what it cost you. That sounds great, right? Here's what restaurant number 2 did. They offered this very same $40 meal that their competitor was, but in addition to the $40 meal, they were giving you a bottle of wine and a dessert. So you still paid $40 for the meal, but you got a bottle of wine, which on their menu was listed for $25, and you got a dessert, which was listed on their menu for $6. So now you're getting a perceived value of $71 for $40. You spent $40, but you got a value of $71. Which one would you choose? Most people would take the offer of that second restaurant day in and day out. Sure, you get $10 more value at restaurant number 1, but you get $31 more value if you go to restaurant number 2. That is a market dominating position. So in your business, what is it that differentiates you from your competitors? If there isn't anything, then this is an area that you need to begin to work on. What are the pain points of your audience, of your target market? What are the struggles they have? What are the problems they have? How can you tweak your business so that it meets their wants, needs, and desires? And does it so better than your competitors? So tonight we've talked about identifying your target market, and we've talked about creating a market dominating position. And again, we're going to revisit these 2 components throughout the next 5 days as we go through these 10 strategies to be able to thrive in tough economic times. So I look forward to being with you in our next video, where we will look at 2 ways to increase your lead generation. Until then, this is Chris Mahan from Chris Mahan Consulting. Again, if you've got any comments, if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me, chris@chris-mahan.com, and I'll be glad to get back with you. So until next time, best to you. Bye.